Hey everyone, this is Niels with another tutorial for Cloud Manager. This time I'm going to show you how to set up a cloud provider for Google Cloud. Okay, so let's start. We're going to click Extras, Settings, and create a new provider here. I'll give it a name like Google Toot. Click OK. And the provider type must be changed to provider plugin. And the plugin name is going to be Google Cloud. So now we have to figure out 3 of those credentials here. We have to find out the user ID, the project ID, and the key file. And to get those credentials, we move on to the left side here to the dashboard of Google Cloud. And if you haven't done so, you should stop now this video and go to the help files. We show you the link here and follow our tutorial on how to set up Google Cloud for use with Cloud Manager. Okay, so now you should have a new project here. You can, if you have more than one, you can switch between those here. We're going to use the rrTest project here. And first of all, what we see in the dashboard here in the project info box, we find the project ID. And this is this one here. We can just select this, Control C and Control V. And now we have the project ID in place here. Okay, so now we're going to find the user ID and the key file. We click on the navigation menu here and go to IAM and admin. And now we go to the service accounts here. So, and if you followed our tutorial, you should have a similar user here. And we choose the name Royal Render for that service user, but you might have chosen a different name. Either way, you can just copy this or just click the button copy to clipboard here and then paste it as the user ID here. Okay, and finally, we have to figure out the key file. To get the key file, we go to this actions menu here and choose manage keys. And then you get a list of all your active keys here. And the problem with the keys here is if you haven't saved it on creation, you have no chance to get the actual key file back. But this shouldn't be a problem because we can just quickly add another one. So in order to show you how that works, we click on Add Key here, Create New Key. We choose the key type JSON, click on Create, and then we are presented this file save dialog, and then we save it to a place where we can find it. Save, close this one, and we're done, basically. So now we can go to the folder where we saved this key file. Quickly do that. And I get it from here. In my case, this is the file we just saved to the hard drive in this folder. And we can right click and use copy as path. Go back to the cloud settings, paste this, remove the quotation marks, and quickly replace the backslashes with normal slashes. And we are done with the credentials. So now we can click the button Test Connection in order to see if everything works out fine. And we're requesting the available locations as a test. Awesome. Success. API connection check succeeded. Click OK. And now we have a list of cloud locations here that are available for us. And in this case, I go with Europe West 1C in this case. but you might want to choose your own location. I think it's a matter of pricing, but it is up to you. And online you will find a list where those locations are actually, in which countries they are located. And now we can move on to the virtual network part here. We have the virtual network resource group. You can leave that name as is. You don't have to change that, only if you really want to. The virtual network name is the same. We just use the provider name you chose here and put a prefix in front of that, the $R. The subnet IP range is the IP range that is used for the whole virtual network. You can leave it as is. I think you only have to change those values if you really know what you're doing and if you have special needs here. The renderer subnet IP range is the pool of IP addresses where Google Cloud will get the IPs from when launching new render VMs. We can leave that as is too. And next we have this checkbox here, which decides whether Royal Render should take care of creation and management of the VM connection. We leave that as is too. I think you only should disable this checkbox if you really know what you're doing and if you really want to manage everything OpenVPN related yourself. If you leave the check mark here, Royal Render will take care of creation and everything else. But you don't have to worry in this moment. That will be covered in a different tutorial where we use the virtual network creator. Okay, so then we can move on to the OpenVPN settings. We have the tab device name. You can leave that as is. The subnet IP range. In most of the cases, you can leave this value and this value, the client subnet IP range, with the default values here. But what you should definitely change is the local network IP range, which is the network mask that you are using in your on-premise network, where you have your local machines probably and the machine that is running the cloud manager and so on and so forth. In our case, we can leave this default value because that's how we configured our local network. And then we can move on to the VPN VM size. That is the size of the virtual machine that is going to run the OpenVPN server. And basically the VM size describes how many cores the virtual machine has, how large the hard drive is, and how large the RAM size is. Most of the cases you can just click here, load available VM sizes, and wait a second. And then we have the VM sizes loaded. So this drop-down box is populated with all the available VM sizes. I think I'm going to go with N2, and maybe that's too large. But maybe we go with a standard and for like 15 gigabytes of RAM. That should be enough. And then we can choose the VPN VM image. Most of the time you will want to use the default image just by clicking this button here, and it grabs the ID of our predefined image that already has the OpenVPN server running and everything else configured, so it's ready to go. If you have special needs here, you might want to create your own image, but most of the time you want to go with the predefined image here. Okay. If you want to administrate your OpenVPN server, you don't have to use username and password here. That doesn't work for Google Cloud and Amazon AWS. It's only needed for Azure. We're going to use the SSH key file here. And I'm not going to show how to create that file. That will be shown in a different tutorial. In this case, I just grab the PPK, which is the putty key file here, which we've already created. Also copy this as path, and then I can paste it here, remove quotation marks, and change it into normal slashes. And we are ready in this section. Then we have, for convenience here, the download link to the OpenVPN client. Please just download that, install it, and the configuration will be part of one of the next tutorials. So don't worry about that. Okay, so we can move on to the ROI render settings. The first setting we have to provide here is the share where the ROI render installation is located. In our case, this is 192.168.0.61, and the share name is Royal Render. Then we have an optional NFS network path. We won't use that, but in case you are using NFS, please use that instead of the Zamba path. Now we want to add the IP address of the machine that is actually running the Cloud Manager, the application we are currently working in. So in our case, this is 192.168.0.60. And if you have a separate share on a different file server, you want to provide the host name and the IP address. We have a Windows file server on site that we are using for scenes, textures, and so on. And the host name in our case is Royal Share, and the IP address is 192.168.0.167. And all those values are dependent on how you configured your network. So please make sure that you change those values that suit your case. Okay, so, and then we're pretty much done with creating the cloud provider for Google Cloud. So the only section that's left here right now is the domain settings, the Active Directory settings. You only have to use that in case you are administrating your machines through Active Directory. So you would have to give the domain URL, the organizational unit, the domain admin username, and the domain admin password. And in order to test if those credentials are right, you can use that button to test that. Okay, so we're done creating the cloud provider. And yeah, we've learned how to get the Google Cloud credentials for this provider here. And we learned how to configure the OpenVPN part. We learned how to configure the ROI render settings, the share settings, and the file server settings. And yeah, in the next tutorial, we are going to learn how to create a cloud connector that actually uses the cloud provider that we created in this tutorial. Okay, thank you very much, and see you next time.